things go wrong, we're gonna have problems in our lives. And when you have a problem, you got to deal with it somehow. A problem I am defining as something which causes you suffering. So you're gonna have problems. Got to deal with them. Three options, really two options, because option number one is to just put up with it and continue to suffer. This isn't, you can do this, and sometimes you have to do this. You don't have another option. But it's not really dealing with it because you're still suffering. So you haven't really dealt with anything. You're just sort of bearing it. Um, but that's option one. We're not really going to talk about that because that's not really dealing with the problem. So when it comes to dealing with the problems, you can do any problem in the universe that I can think of can be dealt with in both of these ways. Um, and I will call it. I'm sure someone's written about this. I'm sure this is like some like very widely known shit that I am just thinking I came up with. But I call them that you can either solve a problem internally or externally, which I will call you can solve it the Buddhist way or the communist way. Uh, the Buddhist way internal, so that would be I'll start with the communist way. So I call it the communist way because of the Marxist phrase about philosophers up to this point have only interpreted the world as our we're gonna change it. That's why I call it the communist way because I don't know, I thought it'd be kind of funny, but changing something external. So this is more like a traditional way to solve a problem. So something's broken, or like I don't know, this thing doesn't work. I'm gonna change it so that it works now. That's if you have a problem, right? You change something external to your mind, and then it solves the problem. So your problem might be, I don't know, capitalism. Since we're talking about communism, right? You have the problem that capitalism has, doesn't work for you, and so you decide to change the way that goods are distributed and stuff like you do a communism is what I'm trying to say. You change the external world, and then the other one, the Buddhist method or internal change, would be to eliminate to go inside yourself and to change your own thought process so that you no longer uh, see it as a problem anymore. Basically, so for example, it might be a little more difficult to think of this, but it could be something like um, maybe you're an alcoholic and it's causing you a lot of problems. You could start by smashing all your bottles and throwing them all out and whatever, but to change your alcoholism to fix that problem, you have to go inside your own head and stop desiring alcohol. Uh, you know, in a basic sense. So those are the two ways to solve problems, and every problem can be solved both ways. And I think you might be expecting me to say everyone should be doing this way. Everyone should. The Buddhist way is terrible because it's victim blaming, or the communist way is terrible because it imparts your own desires onto everyone else in the world and doesn't take them into account. Um, Now, both, to be fair, those are both fair criticisms because every single problem has its own approach. Take my computer. Say, imagine my computer breaks. Something's broken on my computer. It's not doing what I want it to do. I could just say, well, I need to simply no longer desire that it does that thing. Like, oh, I can no longer use the internet. Okay, I'll just simply change my lifestyle, change my attitude to that. I no longer desire to use the internet. And that would genuinely solve the problem because there would be no problem anymore, right? But I think it's a bit more sensible to just fix the fucking internet on my computer, just fix the Wi Fi. I think it makes more sense in that case. However, there are situations where that isn't possible for a variety of reasons. You might, for example, be suffering because you're suffering. Oh, I fucking I really want a new house. And I don't have the money for it, and I'm suffering because I can't afford this house. Well, it's probably a smarter idea rather than suffering even more, going through a bullshit job, finding ways to get money, doing whatever you got to do to afford your house. Well, in your circumstance, in my circumstance, it might be more appropriate to simply remove the desire for earthly possessions, as a Buddhist might put it. Uh, accept that it's all transient anyway, and be like, do I really need that new house? You know, I'm pretty comfortable in my room. I don't need a new house. I'm good. So in that case, probably better to solve the problem not by buying a new house, but by going inside yourself and being like, maybe wealth and physical goods and all this stuff isn't what life's all about, and I shouldn't desire those things, and reframing your mind into a more minimalist attitude. So every problem has its own solution. You can pick one of the both, and a lot of times you can do both of them at the same time, really, which is a bit weird. Uh, yeah, and then now you can go pretty fucking extreme with the Buddhist version. I've picked fairly asinine topics for the Buddhist solution, but Buddhists go a bit. They go a bit extreme with this shit. They take it really to the end of the logical extremes, right? It's like you could be like, okay, my problem is I can't afford food. Well, you could solve that problem by getting food, or you could solve that problem by no longer desiring to stay on this earth and being completely fine. You know, I'll just accept the fact that I'm going to starve to death, and then you wouldn't suffer. It's true. You genuinely wouldn't suffer if you could truly attain enlightenment and eliminate all worldly desires. You truly wouldn't suffer in that case. A little bit difficult, but um, once you do it, it's kind of like, you know what, it's kind of like Gentoo. Buddhism's kind of like Gentoo. Difficult, but once you do it, you know, yeah, something like that. So like, it will actually solve your problems, and you might have like weird problems. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of shit going on here with desire. There's a whole bunch of shit going on with desire. Like I think in the past, you know, in Eurasia, shall we say, in the classical period, I believe it's called. Um, you know, we were a bit, in my opinion, my personal opinion, maybe a bit too far on the Buddhist side of things. A bit too, because you know, Confucianism and Buddhism were the major religions in the East, and Stoicism was the major philosophical movement in the West, and also Christianity, which has aspects of this Buddhist thing. You know, like the Tree of Temptation, Adam and Eve thing is all about how like desire caused, like literally just because in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve had everything that they could need, they could have wanted, they had everything they needed, but they desired the evil fruit that the talking snake wanted them to have, and their evil desire caused original sin, which, you know, was like the whole big, started this whole mess according to Christians. So like that's also a thing. Christianity, I think in the classical period, like this, everyone was all about this sort of thing, and I think the reason for that is because of how society was built. There was no social mobility, like almost no upward social mobility in the world then. If you were born a peasant, you were going to die a peasant, and your children would also die peasants. Everyone was going to be a peasant in your family for the foreseeable future. And so you can't really change the world. Like, if you have a broader problem with the way things are, good fucking luck. It's actually easier to deal with it by just being like, I should probably stop wanting that. You know, it's that sort of thing. And it is actually possible to control your desires. You know, there is like one of the major global religions which is based around this entire concept, Buddhism. Like, they're not making this shit up. It is possible to, I don't know about enlightenment, I don't know about completely eliminating all desire, but it is possible to control your desires. It's mostly habit, I've found. Um, like, yeah, I'm trying to control my desire for carbs these days. It's tricky. But yeah, it's mostly habit, I've found. So it is possible to regulate your desires, and again, this was basically all the rage for like hundreds of years in the classical period in antiquity. But I think now we've gone a little too far in the other direction, where we've become a little too commie. We've goddamn commies ruining everything for everyone yet again. Where like having control over your own mental state is seen as somehow like complete bullshit, and that every problem has to be solved by changing something in your environment instead of, you know, maybe looking inwards and making an internal change. I think this is perfectly summed up with the common meme about communists and Starbucks, you know, like, oh, you call yourself an anti-capitalist, but you're buying Starbucks lattes, and then the communists say, well, just because I buy a fucking latte once in a while doesn't mean that my ideas about the economic system of the world are invalid. Like, that's not really an argument. And that's a fair point. However, you know, you're not helping yourself. Like, maybe your desire, maybe the world's desire for sweet, sugary, caffeine-containing drinks is in some way helping to prop up the capitalist system. Maybe your desire for proprietary operating systems and mobile tracking devices and free internet, well, not free, that's the problem with capitalism, is it's not free. That's the whole point of this whole thing. It's not free. Expensive internet, what am I talking about? Something about internet bad, modern internet bloated and bad, something about that. Maximalist bloated programs, your desire for those things, and you know, iPhones, your desire for the new fancy iPhone. If everyone stopped desiring those things, they would no longer be made, and all of the suffering that is created on the pipeline for that iPhone arriving in your hands would no longer exist, because those products wouldn't be made if people didn't desire them anymore. Like, that is a thing that's real. And so sort of saying like, oh, well, we can't solve that problem until we eliminate capitalism isn't true. And I think it's a little easier to use an old phone like the one I use. You know, my phone's... Let me check, actually, because I've been interested in this for a while, but I forget what my phone exactly came out. Nexus 5X, by the way. 2015, it says, first came out. I probably got it in 2015, 2016, around that period. That's probably when I got it. So that's pretty old. And yeah, it's a bit slow these days, but it's not unusable. I use it every day pretty much. I mean, not that much, because phones are just a terrible, terrible piece of hardware. Just a terrible form factor. Everything about phones is just awful. But, you know, I use them to record videos and do some other stuff, so it's usable. It works. Like, at no point have I ever seen a Marcus Brownlee or Linus Tech Tips video about the brand new iPhone and been like, oh, I want to save up £1,000 to buy. Like, no. You're an idiot if you do that. I think this is fairly well recognized, and yet somehow it's still socially acceptable. And even... not only socially acceptable, but encouraged socially, because everyone's minds are just warped by mountains of advertising and psyops and stuff. So there's a situation where we need a bit more Buddhism in our lives, you know? I genuinely think that just saying, oh, nothing we can do about it until we abolish capitalism completely is just ridiculous. I think Marx would probably find it ridiculous as well. I think every reasonable... you know, leftist scholar of the past 100 years would probably find that somewhat ridiculous, but I don't know. I'm not a leftist, so I can't tell you. But yeah, like, I think that sort of attitude, maybe we've gone a little too far in the other direction. Maybe we've gone a little too far in the external change type of situation, and maybe people need to be looking internally, being like, maybe the problem is me. Not the entire problem, but part of the problem is me. Every problem can be solved both ways, but maybe a few more things than you think could be solved by changing your own desire. Because a lot of times the external change, Marxism, communism side of this, which has not really got anything to do with Marxism and communism, I'm just using it as an example. The external change side of this is used more as an excuse than anything else. Like, in the same way that sometimes the Confucianism, Buddhism side of this is used as victim blaming rather than actual advice. They both can be used maliciously, which is a problem when you're a fallible human being engaging in rituals of folly that you call your life. It's hard to figure this shit out. And so yeah, that's basically all I'm here to say. It's just good luck. Good luck figuring it out, because I certainly haven't. I haven't figured any of this shit out. I'm just trying to fucking, I don't know what I'm doing. Just chilling. I'm probably too attached to my ThinkPad. If I was a Buddhist, I would have to be like, no, I would have no desire for good, minimalist, and efficient software. I have no desire for ports on the side of my fucking laptop so I can actually do things with it. I have no desire for that. I have no desire to replace parts when they break. I must worship the court of Apple. Doesn't Zizek have something about that, about how like Buddhism and Eastern philosophy is like the number one philosophy among CEOs, more than Western religion and philosophy? I think he has something about that, and fair point to him. Maybe he's right. I suppose when you're a pretty evil person, the best way to not the best way to sleep at night is to convince yourself that, well, nothing matters because everything's transient anyway, so, it doesn't matter how many children I murder. So Jeff Bezos can sleep at night. That's probably true. That makes sense. I can imagine that. Rather than having to justify why you're not going to be punished in the next life for that. But then again, don't Buddhists also believe in being punished in the next life? So who knows? None of them live ascetically anyway. It's not like any of this. Like Zizek says that, but when have you ever seen an actually ascetic, like, CEO? Like I've never actually seen a CEO that's a good Buddhist. When I say ascetic, I don't mean fully ascetic. Just like, doesn't live in a mansion on a private island. Yeah, when you ever seen one of those? When you ever seen a CEO that doesn't have every expensive thing they can possibly have? I've never seen one. They love them. They love them. They love money. I don't know if you knew that about rich people. They love money. They love it. It's crazy. They can't get enough of it. It's wild. It's wild. Like, how much do you need, bro? You spare a little for the rest of us. Come on now. What's going on there, eh? What's going on there? What could possibly make you want to do that? Ridiculous. Very strange. So yeah, something about that. I don't know what that point was. That was a point that I made. Got a lot of water going into my system these days. It's good. Hydrates you about water. That's one thing about water that's good. It allows your cells to function. I'm a big fan of that. Look at them functioning. Yeah, I need to. Speaking of my phone, my Nexus 5X, since I have the Wikipedia article up on my ThinkPad over there, I need to root this bastard. I need to root this bugger, because that might surprise you that I haven't done that. It's just because it's a bit of a hassle, and I just haven't really. I don't know. I know why I haven't done it. It's a bit of a hassle, and I've never thought it was like that important that I would have to do it, because there's not. The only thing I want to do the only reason I actually want to root my phone. Please stop messing. What is this? Stop! What could you possibly want to tell me that is this important? Okay, we're reading this out. Oh, it's Dotesmite. Of course it's Dotesmite. Dotesmite. Always talking to me like a friend. What's that about, eh? What's that about? Always trying to talk to me like I'm your friend or something. Need help. What's that one Shinseiki Matsuri-chan song? It's like the most Shinseiki Matsuri-chan song. It's very it's like sparkly and vibey in a specific way. The most Shinseiki Matsuri-chan song, it's probably on Tumane. It could be, let's see, what would I class as I think what Dotesmite would class as the most Shinseiki Matsuri-chan song is probably different from the one I would class, but it's probably Rock and Roll wa Narayama Nai, or whatever the fuck that song's called. Shinseiki Matsuri-chan Rock and Roll. So that would be this one. I would assume that this is the most. I mean, this is the original Shinseiki Matsuri-chan song, right? Like the first original one. Let's see if that's the right one, shall we? That'll be an interesting story to progress as we talk more about my phone. The only reason I want to root my phone in the first place is just to delete all the bloatware that comes pre-installed on phones. I have no other interest, there's really nothing else particularly useful that I need a rooted device for. Okay, no, not that one. Let's see. Could you... Let me put my phone down for a second. Could you give me some more description of the song? Might help. So yeah, I like, what do you really need I'm not sure what you need a rooted phone for, other than that. I've never thought, like, if only I could do this with my phone. I mean, maybe, I suppose to install a custom ROM. I don't know if I'd even want to install a custom ROM though, because most of them are kind of buggy and shit. She remembers a melody. This is an important development. Record it. Record singing it in Audacity and send it. Damn, I'm good at typing with one hand. My nose is itchy. She says she already did, but I did not receive a audio file. Ah, here it is. Let's see. She probably does not want to hear her singing voice publicized on the internet, so I won't do that level of humiliation here. I'm always willing to help find a Shinseiki Masu-chan song. Anyway, this video went off track. Something about communism? I don't know, it's all a meme, isn't it? It's all a joke. It's all a big joke.